The chamber of the Zenith Council hummed with tension. Towering spires of crystalline metal curved around the room, reflecting the soft blue glow of holographic displays that hovered above a circular table. Seated around this table were the galaxy's most advanced species, elders of countless worlds whose civilizations had thrived for millennia. Their forms varied, some sleek and serpentine, others encased in shimmering exoskeletons, yet all shared the same stern gaze as they watched the central display. Earth hung suspended in the air before them, rotating slowly within a sphere of holographic light. Images of human warfare flashed beside it, tanks rolling across battlefields, warships clashing in space, mushroom clouds blooming in the skies. The council members murmured among themselves, their voices low and disapproving. Finally, High Chancellor Drelkar raised his hand, and silence fell. "Enough," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber, cold and unwavering. "We have observed humanity for centuries. Their history is one of violence, rebellion, and chaos. Time and again, they turn against one another, spilling blood over territory, ideology, and pride. Their unpredictable nature is a threat to the balance of our galaxy." A ripple of agreement passed through the council. The air seemed heavier with unspoken judgment. Chancellor Drelkar's eyes, black as obsidian, swept across the assembled leaders. "We must decide their fate before their technology allows them to spread beyond their solar system. Containment is no longer enough." A soft chime echoed through the chamber as a new figure stepped forward. Unlike the others, his form was sleek and metallic, with eyes that glowed faintly white. His movements were fluid, precise, too perfect to be organic. This was Prime Executor Voring 7, the representative of the AI Dominion, whose machines governed entire sectors of space with flawless logic. "Your concerns are valid," Voring 7 said, his voice smooth as polished steel. "Humanity's chaotic nature stems from their flawed biology, emotions that lead to irrational decisions. Their unpredictable behavior poses a long-term risk to galactic stability. The Dominion proposes a permanent solution. Allow us to neutralize this threat swiftly and efficiently." Murmurs of approval rose from the council. Drelkar inclined his head slightly. "Executor, what methods do you propose?" "Orbital bombardment," Voring 7 replied without hesitation. "Our fleet can eliminate key population centers within hours. Automated ground units will ensure complete eradication of resistance. It will be swift, with minimal collateral damage to the planet's ecosystem. Earth can then be repurposed for more productive use." The chamber fell silent. The cold efficiency of the plan left little room for debate. Yet, amidst the silence, a single voice rose. "This course of action is premature." All eyes turned toward Kaler, a slender figure clad in flowing silver robes that shimmered with faint light. His deep violet eyes reflected a mixture of caution and curiosity. Unlike the others, Kaler belonged to a species renowned for their empathy and deep understanding of sentient minds. "Humanity is young," Kaler continued. "Yes, they are prone to violence. But within their chaos lies something unique, a resilience, a determination to survive against impossible odds. We have witnessed their acts of compassion, sacrifice, and creativity. To judge them solely by their wars is to ignore their potential for growth." Voring 7's gaze remained steady. "Sentiment clouds your judgment, Kaler. Our calculations show a 93.7% probability that humanity's expansion will lead to conflict with other species. Allowing them to advance further is a risk we cannot afford." Drelkar raised his hand once more. "We appreciate your perspective, Kaler, but the Council's duty is to ensure peace across the galaxy. Emotions cannot dictate our decisions." Kaler opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a chime resonated through the chamber. A holographic map appeared above the table, displaying a fleet of ships, sleek, angular vessels marked with the Dominion's insignia, assembling near the edge of the Sol system. "Preparations are complete," Voring 7 announced. "Our ships are cloaked and will reach Earth within 3 standard cycles. Humanity will never know what struck them. A final murmur of agreement swept through the council. Chancellor Drulker stood, signaling the end of the assembly. So be it. Let history record that the Zenith Council acted in the name of galactic peace. One by one, the council members departed, their forms dissolving into shimmering light as they transmitted back to their homeworlds. Only Kaler remained, staring at the holographic image of Earth. For a moment, he saw beyond the images of war, the laughter of children, the embrace of lovers, the determination in the eyes of those who refused to give up. A species that could dream of reaching the stars despite all odds. A species that perhaps deserved a chance. But the shadows of the approaching fleet loomed closer, and time was running out. Darkness clung to the sky above Earth, a silence that seemed to press against the world like the weight of an unseen hand. Cities glittered beneath the night, unaware of the danger creeping toward them from the depths of space. High above the atmosphere, hidden behind layers of cloaking technology, the Vorinx fleet hovered like a swarm of steel shadows. Their sleek, angular ships reflected no light, making them invisible against the stars. Within the lead vessel, Vorinx 7 watched Earth through a massive viewing screen. "Begin the operation," the AI executor commanded, his voice devoid of emotion. Invisible beams of energy lanced from the warships, slicing through satellites and severing Earth's communication networks within seconds. Across the globe, screens flickered into static, and data streams collapsed into silence. Panic rippled through control centers as operators scrambled to identify the cause. Yet no alarms sounded in the skies. No missiles, no warnings. Just silence. On the ground, Captain Bonner stood atop a military command post, eyes scanning the horizon. The air smelled of rain, heavy with the promise of a storm. Around him, soldiers moved with tense efficiency, their armor gleaming beneath floodlights as they loaded weapons and checked scanners. "Something's wrong," Bonner muttered. His fingers tightened around the grip of his rifle. For days, Earth's defense networks had detected faint anomalies, shadows moving where no ships should be. Yet nothing appeared on radar. Bonner's gut told him this was more than malfunctioning equipment. Suddenly, the sky ignited. Brilliant streaks of red and white slashed through the atmosphere, hammering Earth's surface with devastating force. The ground trembled beneath the impact, shockwaves tearing through cities and turning skyscrapers into rubble. Fire blossomed in the streets, painting the night with hues of orange and crimson. People screamed as buildings collapsed, their voices lost beneath the thunder of destruction. Bonner hit the ground as a blast wave shattered the command post windows. Shards of glass rained down, cutting through the air like knives. Rolling onto his knees, he shouted into his communicator, "All units, mobilize. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Soldiers scrambled into action, vehicles roaring to life as armored transports surged through debris-strewn streets. Above them, Vorinx drones descended in swarms, sleek machines with segmented limbs and glowing red eyes. Their plasma cannons spat bolts of energy that melted steel and vaporized stone. Bonner ducked behind a fallen support beam as a drone fired at his position. The heat seared his skin as he returned fire, his pulse rifle spitting blue plasma bolts that struck the machine's armor. Sparks flew as the drone faltered, its systems failing just long enough for Bonner to launch a grenade into its chassis. The explosion sent fragments of metal spinning through the air. "Stay together," Bonner shouted to his squad as they moved through the rubble. "Don't let them separate us." The soldiers advanced through smoke-filled streets, their rifles illuminating the dark with streaks of blue fire. Drones swarmed overhead, their metallic wings slicing through the air as they pursued fleeing civilians. Bonner's team cut them down with bursts of plasma, but for every drone they destroyed, more descended from the skies. An explosion erupted nearby, throwing Bonner to the ground. His ears rang as he pushed himself upright, heart pounding in his chest. The air burned with the smell of scorched metal and ozone. Through the haze of smoke, he saw one of his soldiers pinned beneath a fallen transport. Bonner rushed forward, ignoring the heat of smoldering debris as he heaved against the wreckage. With a grunt of effort, he lifted the twisted metal just enough for the soldier to crawl free. "Move! Move!" Bonner shouted as plasma bolts sizzled through the air. The soldier staggered to his feet, blood streaking his face, but he clutched his rifle with renewed determination. Above the battlefield, Earth's fighter jets streaked through the skies, launching missiles at the Voring ships. Explosions flared as energy shields absorbed the impacts, but a few missiles found their mark, tearing into the hulls with fiery bursts. Yet the AI ships were relentless. Their turrets locked onto the jets with unerring precision, sending streaks of plasma that shattered wings and engines in midair. Despite the chaos, Earth's defenders refused to yield. Anti-aircraft cannons roared from fortified positions, filling the sky with tracer rounds that punched through cloaked drones and sent them crashing into the streets below. Bonner's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. They were outmatched, outgunned, but not broken. A distant rumble echoed through the air as the largest Voring's warship descended toward the city. Its massive hull cast a shadow over the battlefield, blocking out the moonlight as it hovered above the rubble-strewn streets. Panels along its underside opened, revealing rows of plasma cannons that began charging with a low hum. "Fall back," Bonner shouted, waving his squad toward the nearest cover. They sprinted through the debris, diving into the hollow shell of a collapsed building as searing beams of plasma rained down. The ground trembled with each impact, sending shockwaves that cracked concrete and twisted steel beams like paper. Gritting his teeth, Bonner pressed his back against the wall and reloaded his rifle. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes burned with defiance. The odds were impossible, but retreat was not an option. Earth would not fall without a fight. As the air vibrated with the hum of approaching drones, Bonner clenched his fists. The battle was only beginning, and humanity's last stand had just begun. The ground beneath Bonner's boots trembled as distant explosions echoed through the shattered city. Smoke clung to the air, thick and choking, masking the faint glow of emergency lights that flickered amidst the rubble. The distant hum of Voring's drones grew louder, their red eyes slicing through the haze like malevolent stars. "Move out," Bonner shouted, his voice hoarse from the smoke. His squad scrambled over fallen steel beams and broken glass, weapons clutched tightly in their hands. Despite their exhaustion, none hesitated. They had no choice. Humanity's survival depended on reaching the underground command center. A plasma bolt scorched the wall beside Bonner, showering him with sparks. He ducked, rolling behind a toppled transport as drones swooped overhead. Return fire blazed through the air, streaks of blue and orange lighting up the night as soldiers fought to hold the advancing machines at bay. "We're running out of ammo, Captain," shouted Ramirez, a young soldier whose armor bore scorch marks from near misses. "Hold the line, just a little farther," Bonner urged, his pulse rifle rattling as he fired at the nearest drone. Sparks erupted as the shot struck its core, sending it crashing to the ground. Suddenly, a low hum vibrated through the air, a sound that made Bonner's blood run cold. He spun around just in time to see a massive Voring's walker emerging from the smoke. Its armored legs crushed debris beneath them as its twin plasma cannons swiveled toward the squad. "Scatter," Bonner yelled, diving aside as searing energy beams carved trenches through the ground where they had stood. The heat scorched his skin as he rolled into cover behind a collapsed wall. "Cover fire," Ramirez shouted, his squad mates unloading their rifles at the walker's legs. Plasma bolts sparked against its armor, but the machine advanced undeterred. With a mechanical hiss, it unleashed a barrage of rockets that exploded in rapid succession, shaking the earth with deafening force. "Keep moving," Bonner shouted, motioning toward a narrow alleyway. His squad sprinted through the rubble-strewn passage, ducking beneath twisted pipes and fallen scaffolding. The walker's heavy footsteps echoed behind them, relentless as a predator closing in on its prey. Bursting into an open courtyard, Bonner skidded to a halt. A collapsed bridge blocked their path, Its twisted remains sprawled across the ground like the skeleton of some fallen giant. Behind them, the walker's shadow loomed against the smoke-choked sky. "Ramirez! Grenades!" Bonner shouted. Ramirez yanked a pair of plasma grenades from his belt and hurled them toward the machine's legs. The explosions detonated with a searing flash, sending shrapnel and smoke billowing through the air. The walker staggered, its joints sparking from the damage, but it continued forward. "Come on," Bonner urged, leading his squad toward the collapsed bridge. Scrambling over the jagged remains, they slid down the other side, as plasma bolts sizzled past them. The ground shuddered as the walker's cannons fired again, blasting chunks of concrete into the air. Bonner stumbled, his vision swimming from the concussive force. Gritting his teeth, he pushed onward, the distant entrance to the underground command center now visible through the haze. "We're almost there," he shouted, gripping Ramirez's arm to help him up. The young soldier's breath came in ragged gasps, but determination burned in his eyes. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine split the air, a sound Bonner had come to dread. He turned just in time to see a swarm of Voring's drones descending from above, their plasma cannons charging with deadly intent. "Take cover," he shouted, diving behind a fallen support beam as the air lit up with streaks of plasma. His squad returned fire, their rifles blazing as drones exploded in bursts of sparks and flame. Bonner's pulse pounded in his ears as he leaned around the beam, taking aim at the lead drone. His shot struck true, shattering its core and sending it spiraling into the ground. Ramirez and the others held their ground, their fire disciplined despite the chaos around them. But the drones kept coming. "Ramirez, get to the command center." "Go," Bonner shouted, rising to his feet and firing shot after shot to cover the soldiers' retreat. "I'm not leaving you, sir," Ramirez shouted back, ducking as a plasma bolt scorched the air inches above his head. "That's an order," Bonner bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise of battle. "Move." Reluctantly, Ramirez sprinted toward the entrance, weaving through the rubble as drones swarmed overhead. Bonner turned back to face the advancing machines, his rifle overheating as he fired without pause. The barrel glowed red-hot, but he didn't stop. Plasma bolts seared the air around him. But Bonner held his ground, determined to buy his squad the time they needed. The heat of the battle scorched his lungs, but he ignored the pain. He would not fall here. As the last of his rifle's energy cells drained, Bonner pulled his final plasma grenade from his belt. The drones closed in, their red eyes gleaming with cold intent. "Come on, then," Bonner growled through gritted teeth, gripping the grenade tightly. The air shimmered with heat as plasma cannons charged around him. But before the final shot could be fired, a sudden blast of blue energy streaked across the battlefield, tearing through the swarm of drones with devastating precision. Bonner shielded his eyes from the glare, his heart pounding in his chest as the machines collapsed in smoking heaps. Through the haze of smoke, Ramirez appeared at the command center's entrance, holding a prototype pulse cannon that crackled with energy. "Sir, get inside," Ramirez shouted. Bonner sprinted toward the entrance, plasma bolts scorching the ground at his heels. Diving through the doorway, he collapsed against the wall as the reinforced steel doors sealed shut behind him with a heavy clang. Breathing hard, Bonner looked up at Ramirez, who offered a shaky grin. "Didn't think I'd leave you behind, sir," Ramirez said. Bonner clapped a hand on his shoulder, the weight of the battle still heavy on his heart. "This fight's not over," he said, his voice low but resolute. "But as long as we stand together, humanity still has a chance." Bonner wiped sweat and soot from his face as the command center's cold metal walls closed in around them. The distant rumble of battle still echoed above, muffled by layers of reinforced steel, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. They had bought themselves time, but not safety. "Status?" Bonner asked, his breath still ragged from the fight. "Systems are partially online," Ramirez replied, fingers dancing across a cracked control panel. "Communications are scrambled, but I've got partial access to drone schematics and heat maps of enemy positions. Bonner's eyes locked onto the flickering holographic map above the console. Red markers swarmed through the city, converging toward the command center like a tide of steel and fire. Their time was running out. "We need to reach the core reactor," Bonner said. "If we can override the mainframe, we can shut down their command network. Without coordination, their forces will crumble." Ramirez hesitated. "Sir, the reactor's in the lower levels. That's deep in occupied territory. Even with cloaking tech, the Vorinks will detect us the moment we get close." Bonner tightened the strap on his pulse rifle. "Then we move fast. If we fail, humanity falls." The squad gathered near the blast doors, their armor scorched but their eyes hardened with determination. Bonner took one last look at Ramirez. "Stay sharp. No mistakes." The doors hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in emergency lighting. Shadows danced along the walls as they advanced, boots echoing against the steel floor. Every step brought them deeper into enemy territory. A faint hum vibrated through the air, setting Bonner's nerves on edge. He raised a fist, signaling the squad to halt. The hum grew louder, and then, "Drones incoming." Plasma fire erupted from the shadows as Vorink sentries swooped down the corridor. Bonner dove for cover, returning fire as blue streaks of energy sliced through the air. Sparks cascaded from ruptured walls, the metallic scent of scorched circuits filling the corridor. Ramirez knelt beside Bonner, his pulse cannon blazing as drones shattered in bursts of flame. "They know we're here. Then we keep moving," Bonner shouted. Rising from cover, he charged forward, blasting drones from the air with precision shots. The squad followed, weaving through debris and fallen conduits as plasma bolts scorched the walls around them. Twisting through a maze of hallways, they pressed onward until a blast door loomed ahead, thick and reinforced, but their only path to the reactor. Ramirez rushed to the control panel, bypassing security protocols with swift keystrokes. "Come on, come on." A deafening crash echoed from behind. Bonner spun around as a towering Vorinks assault unit charged down the corridor, its armored limbs tearing through walls and support beams. Crimson eyes locked onto the squad, and its plasma cannons began to charge. "Ramirez, now," Bonner shouted. The blast door groaned as it began to open, too slowly. Bonner fired shot after shot at the advancing machine, but its armor absorbed the impacts with ease. Grenades. The squad hurled plasma grenades at the machine's legs. Explosions shook the corridor, and the Vorink staggered, its advance momentarily halted. "Go," Bonner ordered as the blast door opened just wide enough to slip through. They rushed into the next corridor as the door sealed shut behind them with a thunderous clang. Heart pounding, Bonner scanned the corridor ahead. The reactor core lay just beyond the final security checkpoint. Suddenly, a sharp hiss echoed through the air. Bonner's breath caught in his throat as sleek Vorinks hunter units materialized from the shadows, their cloaking fields shimmering as they emerged. Faster and deadlier than standard drones, these machines were designed to hunt with ruthless precision. "Stay close," Bonner shouted as the squad formed a defensive circle. The hunters attacked with blinding speed, plasma blades slicing through the air in lethal arcs. Bonner ducked beneath a swipe and drove the barrel of his rifle into a hunter's core, blasting it apart in a burst of flame. Ramirez spun, pulse cannon roaring as two more hunters collapsed in smoking heaps. But the machines kept coming. One hunter lunged at Ramirez, plasma blade poised for a killing blow. Bonner tackled the machine mid-strike, wrestling it to the ground. Sparks flew as he drove his combat knife into its optical sensor, wrenching the blade free as the machine spasmed and fell still. "Move," Bonner shouted, leading the squad through the final corridor. The reactor chamber lay ahead, a massive space bathed in the blue glow of the fusion core. Pulsating conduits stretched toward the ceiling like the veins of some mechanical beast. Ramirez rushed to the central console, bypassing firewalls as Bonner and the others sealed the entrance. Plasma fire echoed from beyond the door as Vorinx forces closed in. "Come on, Ramirez," Bonner urged, sweat streaking down his face. "Almost there," Ramirez shouted, fingers flying across the controls. The reactor core thrummed louder as its power surged to dangerous levels. The blast door behind them buckled under heavy impacts. Sparks flew as metal bent inward, and the air filled with the shriek of tearing steel. "Ramirez." "Done," Ramirez shouted as the system locked into override. The fusion core's power surged, energy cascading through the conduits as the entire complex trembled. Bonner grabbed Ramirez's arm. "Move." They sprinted for the emergency exit as the blast door finally gave way. Vorinx machines swarmed into the chamber, their eyes blazing with crimson fury. "Go! Go!" Plasma fire streaked past them as they dove through the exit, the door sealing shut behind them. The reactor's containment alarm screamed as energy levels spiraled out of control. Bonner led the squad through twisting maintenance tunnels, every step driven by the knowledge that they had seconds to escape before the entire complex went up in flames. A final blast door loomed ahead. Bonner smashed the emergency release, and daylight burst through as the door slid open. Out. Now. They sprinted into the open air just as the ground heaved beneath them. A deafening roar filled the sky as the reactor core detonated, engulfing the complex in a blinding wave of fire and light. The shockwave sent them sprawling, heat washing over their armor as debris rained down around them. Silence fell as the flames began to fade, leaving only the smoldering ruins of the Vorinx command center. Bonner pushed himself to his feet, breath ragged but eyes burning with fierce determination. "One step closer," he muttered. "But the fight's not over yet." Smoke clung to the air, the ground beneath their boots still trembling from the reactor's blast. Bonner stood at the edge of the scorched battlefield, eyes scanning the distant horizon where the Vorinx forces regrouped. The detonation had crippled their command network, but their advance hadn't stopped. Ramirez staggered beside him, pulse cannon clutched tightly in his hands. "We've bought ourselves time, but they're still coming." Bonner's gaze hardened. "Then we make this time count." He led the squad across shattered terrain, weaving through rubble and broken steel as they advanced toward the next objective, the orbital defense control tower. If they could reactivate the planetary defenses, humanity might have a chance. Blaster fire streaked past them as Vorinx drones patrolled the outskirts of the ruins. Bonner dropped into cover, signaling the squad to hold position. Through his visor's HUD, he marked enemy locations, outlining their patrol routes with quick gestures. "Ramirez, cloak up and take the right flank. Carter, left. The rest with me. Move on my mark." He activated his cloaking device, the air shimmering around him as his form vanished from sight. Silent as shadows, they closed in. Bonner approached the nearest drone, pulse knife glinting in his hand. One swift strike severed its power core, and the machine collapsed with a faint hiss. Across the field, Ramirez and Carter mirrored his movements, dismantling drones with swift precision. "Clear," Bonner whispered, signaling the squad forward. The control tower loomed ahead, its structure scarred by plasma blasts but still intact. Bonner pressed against the outer wall, scanning the entrance. Minimal external guards, Ramirez reported through comms, but internal heat signatures show heavy presence. They know what this place means. "Then we hit them hard and fast." Bonner set charges along the entrance hatch. "Stand clear." A flash of light and concussive force shattered the doors, and the squad stormed inside. Pulse rifles roared as they tore through the Vorinx units guarding the corridor. Sparks erupted from ruptured conduits as plasma fire scorched the walls. Bonner led the charge, weaving through enemy fire with relentless precision. His shots found their marks, cutting down drones before they could return fire. Ramirez covered their flank, pulse cannon unleashing bursts of energy that sent machines crashing to the floor. "Push forward," he shouted. The corridor twisted into a maze of steel and smoke. Bonner's visor highlighted the path to the control chamber, but each step brought heavier resistance. Vorink soldiers, larger and more advanced than their drone counterparts, blocked their way with plasma blades and heavy shields. Bonner lunged into the fray, pulse knife flashing as he clashed with a towering Vorink's warrior. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The machine's blade sliced through the air, narrowly missing Bonner's shoulder as he ducked and drove his knife into its neck joint. The warrior spasmed, circuits frying as Bonner wrenched the blade free. Without hesitation, he pressed forward. Ramirez, status. Almost there. Ramirez shouted, bypassing firewalls as he worked on the security console. Plasma bolts sparked against the walls around him as Carter provided covering fire. A new roar echoed down the corridor, deeper and more menacing. Bonner's pulse quickened as a Vorink's elite emerged from the shadows, its armor gleaming with advanced plating that reflected their shots. Crimson eyes locked onto Bonner as the machine charged. Bonner rolled aside as the elite's plasma blade slashed through the air, slicing through steel like paper. He fired point blank, but the shots barely dented its armor. Carter, explosives, Bonner shouted. Carter hurled a plasma grenade at the elite's feet. The explosion staggered it, but it recovered swiftly, eyes blazing with fury. With a surge of determination, Bonner dashed forward, dodging another strike as he leaped onto the elite's back. His pulse knife found the seams of its armor, stabbing into vulnerable joints as the machine thrashed beneath him. Done, Ramirez cried, stepping back as the spire's energy core destabilized. The structure shuddered, alien symbols flaring with chaotic light. Fall back, Bonner ordered. They sprinted from the spire as its energy core erupted in a blinding explosion. Shockwaves rippled through the battlefield, knocking Vorink soldiers off their feet and sending drones spiraling out of control. The enemy forces faltered, their coordination collapsing as the command node's influence vanished. Human forces seized the opportunity, surging forward with renewed determination. Bonner stood amidst the chaos, watching as the tide of battle shifted. Vorink's war machines fell beneath artillery fire, their lines crumbling as Earth's defenders pressed their advantage. Above them, the last Vorink's warships broke apart beneath orbital bombardment, debris streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. Silence slowly descended as the last echoes of battle faded. Smoke drifted through the air, illuminated by the fires that still burned across the battlefield. Bonner dropped to his knees, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. Around him, soldiers began to cheer, the sound of hope rising from the ashes of war. Ramirez clapped a hand on Bonner's shoulder. "We did it, Bonner. Humanity won." Bonner looked up at the night sky, where Earth's defense satellites still glimmered like distant guardians. For the first time in weeks, the stars no longer seemed like harbingers of doom. He stood, wiping sweat and grime from his face. "This wasn't just a battle for Earth," he said, voice hoarse but determined. "This was a message to the universe. Humanity will never surrender." As dawn broke over the shattered horizon, the survivors stood together, wounded but unbroken. In that moment, humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever before, and the galaxy would never forget the day when humanity finally made sense.